I, before Yom Kippur, had actually prepared a sermon for this evening about Sukkot, which comes on Sunday night. But then something happened in my life yesterday and today. My colleagues here don't even know about this yet. And it was so striking and impactful to me that I ditched the sermon, and I want to share it with you. So I want to invite you into a question. What do you think of when you think about faith? Do you think about God? Do you think about how things unfold? Their results, if they're good or bad, in our lives, in the lives of other people? Is that something you feel confident about? Is it something that you waver around? For those of you who know me, if you were to ask me, do things happen for a reason, I would say, no way. If you were to ask me, so what's your faith? I would say, well, my faith is that it will be all right in how we choose to respond. And that I have a hope that no matter what we are faced with, that we have the possibility with faith to traverse whatever we need to help things to unfold for the good, or more for the good than the bad. But something happened to me yesterday and today that I'll just be real with you, has kind of caused me to question that, question my initial assumption, and I share it with you as an offering. So yesterday, just so you know, for us clergy folk, the day after Yom Kippur is like the best day of our year. We are off, God willing, we're off. Most of us plan to get a massage or a manicure or a pedicure. Some of us go to a movie by ourselves. We do sort of the least holy thing you could think about, because it marks for us a day that's supposed to be all about us, because we like to think that the 2 weeks previous have been about giving of ourselves to everybody else. And so I was on my way yesterday to a self-indulgent activity in the early afternoon, and I was driving from west to east on Lake Cook Road. And I was just driving past, where P.F. Chang and Crate and Barrel are, right? So I was driving straight, green light, driving straight. There was a car going east to west, getting in the left turn lane, and they decided to gun it to try to beat me so they could cross in before I crossed, and they were unsuccessful, and I was in a pretty dramatic car accident yesterday. I'm okay, thank you. A little bruised up on this side, but it's all good. And as it happened, when you're in these traumatic moments where it slows down for you? So, in this experience, I'm watching this car pull right in front of me, and it was all of 2 seconds that this happened, but in my mind, it was slow. And I thought to myself, I'm going to hit this car. Who's in the car? Who is my car going to hit? I hope no one is hurt. I hope I'm not hurt. And then I was like, and I'm going to miss my massage. Because I knew that the whole day was now going to be different. And I was frightened, and also, if I'm honest, just really mad. Annoyed and mad, in particular at this idiot who had done this. So our cars kind of spun around. They were significantly damaged, but we were able to move them to that side road next to P.F. Chang. So you can imagine this. And so we both get out of our cars. We were both alone in our cars. It's clear that the other person was okay enough to get out of the car and walk, as was I. I asked her, are you all right? And she said, well, I guess I will be. And her eyes were wide. And something didn't seem quite right. At which point I sort of stood there, and then she didn't say anything to me, and I was like, well, I'm fine too. And then I walked back to my car, and I looked at her, and I was like, we need to call the police. And she said, oh, I know. At which point she went back into her car, and I went back into mine, and then called the police. And so I sat there in a lot of kind of self-righteousness at this point, because this person had done this, gunned the whatever the to cross the road and really had created quite a problem in my mind. No, not even in my mind. She had created quite a problem. And then I thought to myself, wow, you know, it's so much easier to be righteous between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur than it is between Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. In all seriousness, because I preach this stuff all the time about not judging, not making assumptions. We don't know other people's stories. And thankfully, because that stuff is readily somewhere in my mind, I was able to call upon it sitting in my car. And then I realized this woman and her eyes, they were different. And perhaps what I was seeing was that she was frightened. She was an African American, older woman in a really beat up car on the North Shore. And so I called the police. They came eventually. In the meantime, I waited. She came out of her car again to ask me if I could help her find her hazard lights, because she didn't know where they were. So I came to her car, I found the hazard lights, and then we went back to our cars and sat. The police arrived, they took my license and registration and my insurance. They went to her car, did the same, I assume, went back to the police car. And then the police officer came to me and said to me, here's your license and insurance. You should know that the other driver does not have a license or insurance, and you need to leave. And I said, you know, I think she's frightened, to the officer. And the officer said, I bet she is, and you need to leave. At which point, I left. I drove my car. It was thankfully able to sort of slowly get to the auto body shop. And as I got to the auto body shop, I walked in, and I just started to cry because the thought going through my head, besides the fact that I was like kind of hurt, it hurt me, and all this trauma had happened, I thought to myself, oh my God, this woman is now going to be arrested. And I don't know where she's from. Best case scenario, she gets taken to jail, and this ruins her life that way. Worst case scenario, she's not from our country, and she will now be deported. And all of this is just sort of in me. As my husband arrives, and I'm like weeping, and he thinks I'm hurt, and I was like, the lady's in Deerfield jail, and what's gonna happen? And you know, he sort of tried to calm me down, and he was like, you know, this isn't your problem to worry about. But if I'm honest, it worried me. It worried me the entire night. And it really brought home to me how everything can change in an instant. Nothing is promised to us, and we don't know how life will unfold. And frankly, it left me feeling pretty despondent about the world. Our little North Shore bubble popped, you know, for me yesterday. Until this morning when I was awakened at 6:45 by my cell phone ringing, and I answered it, and it was Officer Maldonado, the officer who I had dealt with the day before. At which point she said to me, this is Officer Maldonado, I wanted to let you know how everything unfolded yesterday after you left, because I could tell you were concerned. So I said, you know, is the woman okay? And she said, yes, Eleanor is okay. Her name is Eleanor. And I said, well, where is she? And she said, I want to tell you a story. After you said that she was frightened yesterday, instead of going back to her car after I left, the officer said, I went back to my car to look up her license plates to see if I could find any contact information about her, because there was something strange going on with this driver. And so she said she was able to get a name and a phone number. She called the phone number, and the woman who answered the phone happened to be Eleanor's daughter. Eleanor has been missing from her family on the south side of Chicago for over 2 weeks. She suffers from dementia. She had taken the car, and the family didn't know what had happened to her. They feared she was dead. And they didn't have the money to kind of put out search information about her, and they had no connection whatsoever to the North Shore of Chicago. At which point the officer said, you know, I was able to then not arrest her. Her family came from the south side up to the North Shore to meet her, Officer Maldonado said she sat with Eleanor in her car for the 2.5 hours that took, at which point the family was able to bring her home safe, well, and alive. And then the officer said this to me. She said, "I don't know what you believe." And I said, "Well, I'm a rabbi, so I might believe." and then she said, "I'm a person of deep faith, and I think that this happened for a reason. I think you were the one in the car for a reason. And had this not happened, who knows what would have happened to Eleanor." So I don't know why things happen, if they happen for a reason or not. And I think we can have faith. We can have faith in a God that intervenes this way. We can have faith in humans who can do the right thing and do a good job. Officer Maldonado is a good cop and did the right thing and changed the trajectory of Eleanor's life, which I think you could understand could have gone in such a different direction, right? So for me, I bring you this story tonight as Torah, to bring the possibility that we never know what will happen, and when we'll be put in a position to be a messenger, to be put in the position to alter the course of life, God willing, for the good. And it's my prayer for all of us in this new year that those opportunities will unfold for us, and our eyes will be open enough and our hearts will be open enough to aspire to see the good, what could be happening, something deeper than the stories we're so instinctually used to telling ourselves that are all about defending ourselves, and instead think about how we might be more human with each other in this amazing human family of which we are all a part.